Manhattan has always been a constantly evolving shape. From the very beginning of human settlement here, and certainly since European settlement here, what you've had is just garbage, landfill, and a lot of efforts to widen the amount of land available for human settlement and development. First, just because people needed to get rid of things they didn't need, and later because the land became economically valuable. And so Manhattan widened on both the east and west sides by several blocks, even in its fairly early history. On the west side, a lot of that landfill expansion is much more recent, and a lot of it is due to the construction of the World Trade Center. The earth that underlay the World Trade Center site, construction workers literally dumped it into the Hudson River and on top of and around of piers on the Hudson River that had previously been docks for maritime commerce and had been a big, important part of the Manhattan economy. Suddenly all of that was first filled with earth and then paved over and eventually became Battery Park City. This was a grand act of government to transform the face of Lower Manhattan, and it was really done largely at the behest of private actors, especially in banking, who saw the need to make Lower Manhattan to really cement its place as a center of banking and commerce. This was in the 1960s, at a time when a lot of corporate headquarters and industry were moving to the suburbs, and the city increasingly was seen as a place in crisis. And you had the Rockefeller brothers, one of them in the state capitol as governor, the other one as head of Chase Manhattan Bank, playing a pivotal role in an effort to repurpose big areas of Lower Manhattan for new development that would form the basis of a kind of economic transformation of the area. The World Trade Center, I think that in the popular imagination, it kind of just rose up from the earth in New York like giant sunflowers, but in fact the Trade Center site had previously been home to Radio Row, which was just city streets that were literally obliterated when the Trade Center was built, but that had been home to hundreds of small family businesses, a lot of them trading in parts for radios and televisions and electronics. And it was really the place where anyone from a professional repair shop to a nerd hobbyist would go and get the electronics they needed. And the businesses of Radio Row organized and really fought the eminent domain effort really hard, but the field was really stacked against them, because you had both the governor of New York and the state's biggest banker, who was his brother, pulling for the project. You had the New York Times pretty much supported, so in a sense you have the whole establishment behind the condemnation of this area as blighted, and court backed up the Port Authority's proposal. So that was the end of Radio Row. The World Trade Center site represented a kind of turning point in the use of eminent domain to claim private property for private uses, essentially. Because while you had the Port Authority in charge of the project and nominally doing this to create office space and support for literally for world trade, what you saw, of course, was that this facilitated heavily subsidized private development, and that really set a precedent, so that a decade and a half after that, the transformation of Times Square and the condemnation and development of key sites along 42nd Street also pretty much proceeded according to the same script. The terrorist attacks completely changed the game for development in Lower Manhattan, needless to say. And I think what they did more than anything was really threw any kind of rational economics completely out the window. And so, not only have we seen roughly $30 billion devoted directly to the rebuilding of the site, but we've also seen tens of billions of dollars more go into helping businesses and into the larger community revitalization project. And amazingly, Congress appropriated a lot of that money through the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is usually there to move funds to low-income urban neighborhoods that really need the dollars to preserve basic infrastructure and keep its housing standing. Congress authorized these block grants to be used for Lower Manhattan rebuilding. So it was used for things, very important things in the world, but not unduly deserved by what is essentially a high-income neighborhood. But grants to museums, to parks, to beautification, to the streetscape. Again, all wonderful, but something that no other neighborhood in the nation got at that point, but that these billions went into Lower Manhattan. And so you saw rational economics go out the window. You now have office space that costs far, far, far more to build than actually any amount of rent could possibly handle, never mind rent from any kind of public purpose, right? So instead we have Condé Nast moving into the building, we have other companies that are going to be moving in and paying heavily, heavily subsidized rent just so that we can say we rebuilt the Trade Center and feel good about that. And both politically and even for me very personally as a New Yorker or someone who was there on 9/11, watching from just a couple blocks away, I sort of share that sense that that site needed to be rebuilt. But the manner in which it was done and the scale at which it was done, I think that's really where the insanity has set in and kind of just compounded the hysterical error of building that site in the first place.